In the culture war, there are no winners, just podcasters. Only a few are willing to risk their lives in the face of some of the dumbest ideas to have ever captured human civilization. Every week, we, Meghan and Sarah Hayter, humbly accept this mission in order to bring you conversations that are equal parts stunning, brave, and unhinged. Welcome to a special place in hell. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Megan.
How are you? I am just back from New York.
Oh, yeah?
Where I'd like to report that there are signs in the windows of bodegas and delis saying no masks allowed, no COVID masks.
Why not?
Because so many people are robbing the stores, holding them up, wearing COVID masks, and are escaping being identified on camera because they're behind the masks. Can you believe it?
I can. There was, I don't know if you remember, there was like a controversy about this many years ago about women in hijabs, like with the full like burqa on. And well, it wasn't women, it was men who would put them on and go and rob places. And it wasn't, I think it was just like it happened once or twice in like the Western world, but it can be a little bit more of an issue in the Muslim world because there's just so many more people who are covering. And so it's not really a thing. And and sometimes men put it on. And I remember there was like even there've been cases of like in Pakistan there was like something, there was kind of a siege in like a mosque. I don't remember exactly what happened, but it was related to some like fundamentalist kind of religious groups. And in the end they tried to escape by covering up in a burqa and like sneaking out. It was kind of an incredible thing. Yeah. I mean, but so it happens. So it's like, it's a problem.
Actually, you know what? I wanted to ask you something. For several months during the pandemic, I was down in Virginia, like a very rural part of it, like the southwest corner of Virginia. And I would remember going into the supermarket, into the food lion. And a couple times I saw this guy who was like a farmer, like probably in his 60s, like literally like out of central casting, like overalls, pot belly, like beard, the whole thing. And he had with him a woman who was like in full niqab, right? Like only eyes showing. Is that what that's called?
Niqab.
Niqab
is what the French. It's
yes. That's when they're out of Le Croix at the Costco. I get niqab. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so she was like fully covered Muslim woman, I guess, with this like Farmer John. Seriously.
Wow.
What would that have been?
Yeah,
but what?
I can see that happen. Yeah. It's like there's some odd couplings happening in terms of that. But that's interesting. So he was a white guy.
Yes.
For sure. Like, okay.
Oh, 100%.
Was he a redhead?
No. Why? Is that a thing?
There's a whole, like, you don't know about the ginger jihadis thing? Have you heard of this?
No.
So there's a trend. I mean, of course, I don't have the numbers, right? We don't have the numbers. I don't know what the numbers are. But
well, then it's not
it just seemed as if when, ISIS was all the rage, that there were quite a bit of gingers, like redheads, who would convert to Islam and become like super Salafi and super intense about religion and become very sympathetic to terrorism, if not outright terror. And they would travel to Syria. There's this whole like trend. Yeah,
like
it was a
in
trend.
the West.
People kept
redheads
in the West,
the U.S. and in the West,
because people kept noticing that out of the converts, there's a good bit of converts who converted to Islam and then went to fight for ISIS, and it just felt as if there were a good bit of them that were gingers, and then it became kind of a meme, the ginger jihadi meme. I can't believe you haven't heard of this. Yeah. Something's up.
So
there's a connection there. I don't know
any
what
psychology? Like, do gingers feel persecuted? And so this is a natural next step?
Maybe it's genetic. Maybe it's, maybe there's something else going on. We need some kind of ginger race science, to tackle this issue and figure it out for us.
Because we do know that there are as many trans people as there are redheads. You know that, right?
Is that true?
No, it's not true.
Oh my gosh.
But it came up. But that was one of the things that came up with, I think, Anne Fausto Sterling, who is one of the top researchers. Yeah, this was the kind of statistic that was floating around, along with like there are as many left-handed people as there are
intersex or something, right?
Yes. Intersex, I think. But like, anyway, we don't have to get into that. But poor redheads. That's fascinating.
Poor redheads. Poor everybody else that has to deal with the radicalized redheads.
Well, this is a perfect segue, actually.
Yeah.
Because we're going to be talking about the redhead du jour, Oliver Anthony, who has a insane, is that his name? Anthony Oliver? Sorry.
So is
Oliver
Anthony his last name?
Well,
Anthony's
actually, he has a different name, but his stage name is Oliver Anthony.
Okay.
So, yeah. Okay. Well, so just so folks know, we're going to be talking a little bit about Rich Men North of Richmond, this insane viral hit that came out of nowhere from this guy, Oliver Anthony. And then we're going to be talking about hate crimes, especially this thing that happened in Lake Arrowhead, California last week. And then we'll do some bonus. So that's what's on the docket here. But yeah. So, okay. So have you heard this song, Rich Men North of Richmond?
No, until you told me that this is what we're going to be talking about today, I had never heard of it before.
Yeah. We're not going to be. Yeah. By the way, there was apparently a debate last night, the Republicans.
Yes.
But who cares about that? Because we're going to be talking about.
Do they matter? I don't think they matter.
Not yet, apparently.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
I know who everyone thinks won, but that's only on my corner of Twitter, so it's kind of meaningless.
I saw two different people announced as the winner.
Really?
Yeah. Nikki Haley I saw from somebody. And then who was I don't know. Maybe Pence?
No, what? No one thought
crazy.
He
won. Some rando did. Yeah.
Really?
Anyway.
I thought Vivek Ramaswamy won.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
what I
Oh yeah. Either
heard.
Vivek or Nikki. So two Indians.
Two Indian
course.
Americans.
Like what else is new?
Excelling at everything.
I know. It's really not fair. They should be like anti-affirmative actioned out of the debates because
they're already
being
people are just trying to get them out of everything. But it would be incredible if we had an Indian president. I think it's possible. It could happen.
You do?
Yeah, not this time around, but I think it could happen. It's happening. It's happened. In the UK Prime Minister is an Indian guy.
You think that's more likely than like an Asian, like Andrew Yang, like a Chinese American or Japanese?
I think so.
In East Asia.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. For the same reasons that they're at the top of the corporate ladders everywhere. All the multinational corporations, all of the right. I'm exaggerating, but many of like the big companies are being headed by Indian CEOs. It's very interesting. Right. So there's something there. There's something magical going on. Yeah. Something in the waters. But yeah, I think he's very. What do you think about Vivek? Do you know anything about him?
I mean, I keep hearing mixed reports. I find him a little bit too. It's just too easy. Like,
what do you mean?
It's a little simplistic. Like, because it's a little it's a little slick.
As opposed to
I don't know.
In the Republican, you know what I mean? Like
I liked this Will Hurd guy.
Who?
That nobody's ever heard of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Actually, Barry Weiss interviewed this very little known Republican candidate named Will Hurd. I believe it's Hurd. He's former CIA. He has a really interesting background. He grew up pretty
deep state. Why do we want this guy in power?
I know. Well, you might as well just own it. No, he's just really interesting, and he's got like 0.01% of the vote. But that was before he was on Barry's podcast, so he's probably at 30% now at least. Anyway, he's not going to win this time around, but he's an interesting guy.
It takes a long time for Republicans. They got to run like 10 times before they become like viable for that.
Yeah, and he's mixed race, I should say. Will Hurd, he's half white.
Half white and
he's
half black.
He's half black.
Okay, half
Sorry.
black.
How can they never say that? How can they never say, oh, he's mixed race, he's half white?
His name is Will Hurd, so I can just presume. I mean, we're in America, majority. I think anywhere else, I would say half white. You know, but here it's half what else? What's the other half?
I know. Although he's from Texas, so he might.
Well, that's a point in his favor.
I know, exactly. No, he won a huge percentage of the Latino vote down there, even though he's a Republican. Cool. Anyway, we're not talking about that. We're going to talk about.
That's the thing we're not talking about.
Okay, yeah. We're going to talk about what everyone's talking about, which is Oliver Anthony. So as far as we know, this guy. He's very much a ginger. He's in rural Virginia.
Very much
so. He has a bushy ginger beard. Good looking guy, actually. We think he's and it seems to be in his early 30s, maybe 30 or so. He is living on a farm in Farmville, Virginia, which is a real place. That's a real place. It does look like it is south of Richmond. And he has worked in, factory jobs in the past. He was injured on the job, and he has this, kind of difficult backstory with that. He's, had substance abuse issues, but, has been recording music. He plays the guitar and he sings, and he's been sort of making, TikTok videos and such, and good musician and good singer and very charismatic person. And so one of his songs that he released a couple of weeks ago just went berserk. It's called Rich Men North of Richmond. That would be a reference to guys in Washington, D.C., inside the Beltway. It's not literally just north of Richmond. And it's a pretty, it's actually quite catchy. I mean, he talks about working jobs for bullshit pay, and just how difficult it is, and it gets to basically it's become controversial because, in a lot of ways, it's just kind of it's an everyman kind of song. Like, it has been embraced by people, across various cultures. There's videos of all kinds of people, black, white, old, young, otherwise, listening along and nodding along. Like, they really relate to it. But there are a couple of lines that stick out, and maybe we'll just play a brief clip so people can hear those.
I wish politicians would look out for minors, and not just minors on an island somewhere. Lord, we got folks in the street, ain't got nothing to eat, and the obese milking welfare. Well, God, if you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for your bags of fudge rounds. Young men are putting themselves 6 feet in the ground, 'cause all this damn country does is keep on kicking them down.
Well, God, if you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for your bags of fudge rounds.
So what's 5'3" got to do with it?
Well,
because it's like you're super fat if you're.
I know. See, are you saying, are you 5'3"? Is this a microaggression against you?
I am 5'3", and this is offensive. I don't know why I'm being targeted.
He didn't say if you're 5'3" and a Desi podcaster.
Yeah, well,
that will be next. Do you know what a fudge round is?
No.
Okay, I actually looked it up, and of course, there's already memes. I typed in fudge rounds, and a million things came up. It's a Little Debbie snack.
I knew, that's what actually I thought. I figured it'd be like a Twinkie thing.
It looks really good. It made me want one. Yeah. So, if you're 5'3", you're 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for your bags of fudge rounds. Young men are putting themselves 6 feet in the ground because all this damn country does is keep on kicking them down. So what's happened is that the Republicans are embracing this as, a sort of anthem owning the libs and such. And the Democrats, the liberals are saying that this is full of dog whistles and that it's possible that this guy is actually an industry plant, who's got like a secret team of backers behind him. I mean, so anyway, the upshot is that this went to #1 on the Billboard chart, which is really significant because basically in order to do that, people have to pay to download your song, which nobody does anymore at all. So, I don't have the numbers are changing all the time. And I'm not somebody who follows the music industry, but this is a very, very, very big deal. Like just massive fluke freak hit. And the reason they're paying for it, of course, is because they want to make a point. Like, I think apparently this happens. There are sort of super fans, in K-pop, for instance. And I think like a lot of the Taylor Swift fans, that like, they're such, champions of the music that they will actually just pay for it, even though they don't have to.
Because they want to see them rise to the top. That's the point. The point is I want a message, I want to make a message. My voice, my vote, my 99 cents are going to get heard here.
And that's what people should do for us. So
I don't know why. No, I mean, maybe they just don't want us to win. They don't want us to be at the top. Feels like I'm taking it personally. But I mean, probably because I'm 5'3".
I'm going to start talking about fudge rounds though.
Okay. We should. We could be,
yeah.
I think, look, here's the thing. We could sell out more. We haven't.
Oh, for sure.
We could. There's a ways to go, and I think that the field is open. Really, I mean, who are we competing with?
Nobody.
There's that big redhead who keeps showing up on Twitter. I don't mean big as in like fat. I mean like you know what I'm talking about. That one very tall woman, like she's like an athlete or something. Pearl something. Pearly Things.
Oh, Pearly Things.
Yeah.
I don't know what she looks like.
Oh, you don't? She's huge. She's
like actually no, I have seen her. She's a redhead?
She is also a redhead, speaking of radicalized redheads, but she is she has this YouTube channel and she shows up on my feed without my consent. It's this the For You feed, but she just pops up there and says all kinds of obnoxious things from time to time. I think we discussed the dramas that ensued because of something she said once, but in any case, so we could be like her. We could be like her since Oliver Anthony, all the redheads are in on it.
Yeah.
We should join them. They know something we don't.
Yeah. I don't know. I have to say, I think it's a good song. And I really don't know what to make of this whole phenomenon. I mean, he apparently turned down an $8 million recording deal, industry offer. And he has since recorded some videos where he kind of explains who he is and describes himself. And I have to say, it's like those seemed a little bit canned. I mean, the idea he lives on this farm and, but he's barely hanging on. And we see him like in what looks like his like beat up laundry room, or he's saying he's living under a tarp. I don't know. Like he's, one of these guys, he bought some land and he's living in some kind of structure on the land, which is not unusual. And he's got a couple of dogs, very sweet dogs that appear in the video. He's playing outside. You can hear like the cicadas in the background or whatever. I mean, it's a very appealing package. And he has made a point of saying that it's not political. He's really just, complaining about the man. And other than the fat, the 300-pound fudge round line, and also a line about, weirdly, he also says, I wish politicians would look out for miners, meaning coal miners, and not just minors on an island somewhere. So that's like a reference to Jeffrey Epstein. And that's kind of...
Is it really?
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Are you sure?
Well, yeah, that's...
No.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's what people are saying. What else would it be? Minors on an island somewhere? Like children on an island?
Oh, so he's saying that not that they care about those island children, but that they're like being pedos. Is that...
I don't... Yes. So because the whole child trafficking thing is an obsession of QAnon and of certain corners of the right. So... That was a kind of.
It could have been like trafficked children, though. It could have been
well, right.
Refugees, like young,
You should have said asylum seekers.
I didn't immediately think he was referring to Epstein Island.
Oh, everybody's. I mean, he probably. But I mean, when you consider that Sound of Freedom is like a huge film this summer, one of the biggest indie films of all time. Right. I mean, that's I don't think you do. I haven't. It's the Tim Ballard. This film about child sex trafficking, which is
being advertised to me. It seemed very earnest.
Well, apparently it's just filled with inaccuracies. It's this kind of hysteria. But that's been, making the rounds in certain corners. So yeah, but it's very interesting. I mean, so this guy really contains multitudes. Like, there are things that I think he would have a lot in common with, like with your average Bernie voter. And at the same time, he's, like thinking a lot about human trafficking. And I don't know, maybe he thinks that Hillary Clinton drinks the blood of trafficked
children. So do you
children.
think this guy is real? Do you think he's
I don't know.
Or is he a plant?
I don't know.
He just came out of nowhere and he's a hit overnight.
I mean, he may be a little too good to be true. I hope he is real. I hope. Maybe he is. But we shall see. It's just very interesting the way these songs get co-opted by certain groups. I mean, we've seen this before. It reminds me of, well, for starters, I mean, it's significant that this has come on the heels of that Try That in a Small Town hit, this Jason Aldean country hit from a few weeks ago. Sarah, you got to brush up on your country music. I'm doing all the heavy lifting here.
It's not even the country. I don't know what's going on. If Twitter is the only way that I know what's going on in pop culture, and even that's not, like, my people are not that into what's,
Okay. Well, yeah. So there was this Jason Aldean who released this single called Try That in a Small Town, which was a pretty banal song. But then with the video was just all this footage of rioting and looting in blue cities. And he's performing in front of the courthouse in Georgia, where there had, where there had been a lynching back like in the 1920s, and people were pointing to that. Now, I'd like to know, there are many, many locations in the South where there were lynchings. So who's to say if he picked that for that reason? In any case, it's one of these things where I think people are reading a lot of stuff into something that wasn't there. I mean, Jason Aldean apparently doesn't even write his own music, did not write that song. But, there's a long history of embracing certain kinds of pop songs for their patriotic messages. When you're in fact completely misreading them. I mean, we saw that
Born in the USA.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I cannot stand political music at all. If
what about, like, even if it's protest music? I mean, that would be like a lot. That's like a lot of music.
Yeah, it's a lot of music. It includes a lot of music. It has to be from so long ago that it doesn't feel political to me anymore, So Born in the USA doesn't feel, it is political, doesn't feel political, because I don't know what he's really talking about.
Well, he's talking about a returning Vietnam vet. That's what that song is about.
You know what I mean? Like that it feels just like a human interest song. It doesn't have political implications today, I guess. But the pop stars that suddenly go very political, it feels like to me that they've it seems like that's a sign of losing their creative touch, like when they suddenly get to be too involved in politics. It seems to me that that's there's something about the creative arts that, in order to be very, very piercing and insightful, it has to be separated from the political landscape, not entirely distinct from, like, not as if that they don't have politics or don't feel anything about, what's going on politically. I'm not asking for apathy, but it kind of,
You're
but it
not
kind
asking
of
for
distance,
apathy.
I think. You know what I mean? I think like remember the cringy Obama songs that came out? I hated it when, and just everybody who was involved in it. You don't remember the Will I Am song?
No, see,
Yes, we can.
Oh yeah, no, that's stupid. But are you talking about artists just sort of like taking political stances because they think that's what they have to do, or like there's actual legitimate artistic expression about a political idea or movement? I mean, there's classic masterpieces written about political movements. I mean, you would discount like most everything.
I personally
from the 70s.
don't love it. I don't
really
personally love
you don't
it.
like Neil Young, like
I think it. Well, I think it has, but that's different for me because I don't experience it in the same way.
Okay,
because it's so distant.
It doesn't feel like virtue signaling to you the way that something.
Yeah, or just I think because I know a lot about what's going on, and if I disagree, if they're saying something stupid, like obviously stupid, like this thing about the Epstein Island. You know what I mean? I wish I didn't know that. I wish I didn't know that was a reference, because that makes me think the whole song is stupider than I did 5 seconds ago. You know what I mean? Like I just didn't, I wish it wasn't even there. I don't need the very, maybe there's something wrong with pop stars now where their analysis is extremely superficial, or just missing the human element of something. I didn't hate this song. I didn't like the song either. I thought it was a little cringy. I don't like I don't like political infusions into music in this kind of blatant way. It just turns me off, and I can't enjoy the song anymore. But it's okay. I mean, if the artist wants to do it as their political expression, that's fine. I don't think this guy is winning a bunch of fans. I think what he's winning is just people who like the message itself, not necessarily his style or his delivery.
Oh, I disagree. I think he's going to
win
a bunch. I think he's going to win a lot of fans. Yeah.
You think he's now?
Yeah.
Now he's,
I mean,
now
in the
he's
country music world, look, I don't know anything about the country music world, but I can already see that there's like crossover here. It's interesting because I'm so guilty of not following pop music at all anymore. And I think it's because to me, it doesn't feel like actual songwriting. It feels like a bunch of sample tracks mushed together and digital enhancements and kinds of beats, and I know there's all kinds of stuff going on independently. I mean, I do listen to new artists all the time, actually, and there are lots of them, but they're never on the charts. Like it's never anything.
Well, yeah, the charts are completely useless.
Or or on the TikTok, whatever. Like the TikTok charts are.
The songs that or the bands that I know of people listening to, my age or younger, they're not. It's really not like Taylor Swift is singular kind of, but I think that it's like kind of like MSNBC. There's a certain age group that's really watching MSNBC, and then after that, it kind of just young people are not. That's not where they're going for their politics. And the same is true of like the top 100, top whatever charts. People just don't listen to the radio.
Oh no, they don't listen
in the
to
same
the radio
way anymore. But so they're not.
How would they like find music that they
through
like?
Friends? I think a lot.
Where do they go? Like Spotify? They have like a playlist, and then Spotify feeds them new things. Okay, but those are charts.
Spotify can help feed you, but it's not usually charts. Spotify will there's an algorithm that helps that it has some way of recognizing certain aspects of the song that you're listening to, and it will match you with similar songs. So you can start a radio. Remember Pandora used to do this?
Yeah.
But it wasn't a charts thing.
But doesn't Spotify have like a top, like a top 100?
It does.
Yeah,
it does have top. It does have top charts. And I'm sure I'm saying some people definitely listen to it. I just don't think that they have the same kind of pull that they used to. There's like 10 artists who do really well on top charts, and then there's just a lot of indie music out there. There are a lot of smaller artists out there. That's probably, I think, a good thing. Might not be great for record labels.
It's hard for right, but it's hard. But they're all self-generating, as are we all. So
it's like the podcast space. It's just like a lot of or Substack space. It's a lot of independent people who are doing really amazing work, actually.
Yeah.
And when it comes to music, they don't have to be. There's no fact checkers or anything. So long as you're good, you're good. And there's a lot of that being produced, which is in a way, it's kind of a new era, like, I think of the pop, like the top charts era, the very Hot 100 radio era, which is kind of how I grew up, actually, up until the internet, internet radio became a real thing. I thought of it as kind of a time where music was awful, just absolutely awful.
Yeah.
And I think it actually has gotten better, but it's just harder to find.
Yes.
It's not visible anymore. You have to search. You have to search for artists. And they can actually make a living, I think, in a way that they haven't been able to before, because there are not as many middlemen around. And so it's kind of an interesting new landscape in music as well. And maybe even a really good one. But as a mom with not any time, I can't find any new music. I don't know.
When your kids are old enough,
I don't have time.
They will give you the music. That's one reason to have kids, is you can keep up on things. Cool. Yeah.
All right. So, I look forward to being on the right beat. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel about all this. Good for him. Good for the right to have like this new voice that's speaking to their needs and resentments, I guess. I think that's what I dislike about it, is that there's a kind of and people are going to get mad at me for this, but please understand that it's coming from a place of love. Okay, I'm
always with you.
I'm like 100% with these guys over big liberals or whatever, but the
big liberal.
I'm with this this kind of person, with the Oliver Anthonys of the world. But I don't like the attitude of resentment. There's something about it that takes away from the pain and the soul of it in a way that rubs me the wrong way. I mean, I think of like the way Fast Car, you're listening to Fast Car and there's this like amazing, like incredible depth of feeling, and she's painting an incredible portrait of a kind of life that people don't think about much, and she's imbuing it with dignity and tragedy and emotion and all kinds of stuff, and there isn't any sense of like someone did me wrong. It's just more of,
really, well, I've been working a convenience store, you can't get a job.
Yeah, but she's not saying those rich men of whatever did it. You know what I mean? Like there's no bad guy. It's a bad situation that she's unhappy with, but I don't remember her pointing the finger at anybody.
Oh, interesting.
As being the person who didn't pay enough attention to her, and that's why, there's a reason she's in this mess, and it's because of the pedos and whatever. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not trying to say that was the summation of this song. It's just something when I hear it, I don't like it, and I see that a lot in just right-wing circles. I see there's a lot of you don't take us seriously, you didn't take Trump seriously, you didn't listen to us, and now,
it's almost like it's injected. Like the song is like 80% fine, and then it's almost like this little infusion of truther stuff, and like it just kind of leaks out from
like you are doing this awful thing to us, and on the one hand, politically, I understand why they feel disenfranchised, and you kind of hear the same thing in like hip hop especially like from a little while ago. Now hip hop is kind of strange, but like the landscape is really weirdly politicized, but like even old Kanye West music, right? Like there's a lot of politics in there. He's naming names.
Yeah.
He's this person did this to our community, and this person did that to our community, and the crack epidemic was spawned by outsiders who hate us, kind of thing. Like those kinds of almost conspiracy, or sometimes like
so why did they get away with
conspiracy?
That? Okay, your white man does the same thing, and he gets no sympathy.
I don't like it in either direction. I don't think I respond well to it, and I don't know why. Maybe that's a little bit unfair for me to not respond well to it, but I don't like it in either direction. It's just that I'm used to hearing it from the hip hop artists.
It's we should get off of this, but I am thinking about how, like, in the past, country music has always been very much like, we're broke and we don't have anything, but we're still happy, but we have love.
Yeah,
Like we're
yeah,
still
we have
better than you
love.
city people. And, it's sort of, it was anti-aspirational. So like, I remember when I first moved to, when I moved to Nebraska when I was 30, and I had never really listened to country music before. And I was like noticing that it was really celebrating, humbleness and almost like lack of ambition, not almost lack of ambition, in a way that was very contrary to the rest of the culture. Like everyone else was a striver. And this is, we're going to talk about how down and out we are, but we still have love kind of thing. And so now we've kept the down and out part, but the love part has gone away. Anyway, people are going to, I'm not an expert on this. I'm just kind of,
I'm not an expert either. So people are going to get really mad about, but I do notice it, and it just puts me off. A lot, the right-wing culture space, there's just a little, there's that, little pinch of resentment. And I think what I gravitate towards is a sense of like, it's that old American sense of we're just gonna, yes, we've been downtrodden, but we're gonna pick ourselves up.
Although it is different. I mean, I have to, but I mean, I think that the conditions for people in that situation now are markedly worse than they were 20 years ago. I mean,
they are.
I thought it was actually moving. I mean, he's talking about working bullshit job for bullshit pay. And I thought it was moving. I have to say. Yeah. So,
I was, I don't think I would listen to it on my free time. I didn't feel it was extremely deep. But no, maybe
it's not extremely deep.
And the thing is, I do, that kind of person is somebody I sympathize with quite a bit. So it's interesting that I'm just not responding well.
He's also very resourceful. You should applaud him. He's making videos. He's doing his own thing. He's in the creator
I applaud
space.
him, sure. I hope he has a lot of success. I don't have to love the music.
Maybe we can get him. Look, I mean, we couldn't book him on this podcast, so if that's not a marker of success, I don't know what is. We can't get him.
Sure.
Maybe if you're listening to this,
Oliver Anthony.
What? Oh my God, Oliver Anthony. Oliver, if you're listening, please consider coming on. Okay. All right. So before we move on to the next topic, what do we have to tell the folks? Any announcements?
Nothing. I mean, you could still buy tickets for my debate. I think there's still
they should.
Some tickets left. It's September 14th. 13th.
You better show up.
I might not show up. I might show up on the wrong day.
Oh my God. Then I'll have to do it.
It's in Los Angeles at the Ace Theater.
At the Ace Theater.
There's going to be all these other incredible like speakers. I'm very honored to be there and surprised that I'm there, honestly. But it's going to be good. There's Grimes is my partner, which is going to be
what if she's such a good partner that you throw me over for her? What if you decide to replace me with Grimes? I could handle that.
If you could handle it, then honestly, then I'm going to definitely go for it because it would be the best case scenario for me.
I think so. And maybe me too.
Maybe everybody, I think everybody wins if there's a new podcast with me and Grimes.
Oh, you mean a second one? I think you should just get rid of me and replace me with Grimes.
And it would be a special place.
Or I could do like a swap with Grimes, and I could it'd be like, and then I could be like Elon Musk's baby mama, and I just have a total switcheroo with Grimes. She could be your podcast partner, and I could just be Grimes.
And take care of her kids, which is what
she doesn't need to.
You want to do?
I mean, whatever. I'm sure they have a nanny, but yeah. Okay.
But she's my partner. I am pro the sex revolution.
Yeah, the question is, was the sexual revolution a failure? Is that the resolution?
Yeah. Has it failed?
Has it failed? And you're going to say that it has not.
Not failed. I'm saying that it has not failed, and for the side that is for the affirmative, saying that it has failed, Louise Perry, author of The Case Against the Sex Revolution, a great book. She's really interesting. I was on her podcast. We're big fans of her on this podcast. And Anna, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but from Red Scare.
From Red Scare. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the Red Scare women is going to be on. So.
Yeah. And I believe Tim Dillon is opening the comic.
Right.
Opening and that's going to be exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big night. Well, I'll be there in the audience. And
cheering me on.
Or your opposition, depending.
Louise.
I don't know.
Okay, well,
we'll see.
Try and make up your mind before.
No, I'm
go there.
I
thought you were going to be a plan for me. I thought that's what we were. I thought we decided that's how we were going to play.
All right, we'll see. We'll see. Okay, so folks, get your tickets to that. We'll post to a link to that. Just go to the Free Press, thefp.com, the Free Press, and you can buy your tickets there. Okay. Oh, and I have an announcement. You know what? Forget it. That's fine.
I don't care. You know what? Forget it.
Whatever. So September 30th in Denver, we're having a comedy show and party after the women's retreat. So you can go to the unspeakeasy.com and find out how to buy your ticket to the co-ed party and comedy event.
Co-ed.
Yeah. Co-ed. So we're having the women's retreat during the day, and then in the evening, same venue, people can come, male, female, or otherwise, and buy tickets.
Are you going to do like singles mixers?
No, but Louise Perry has been doing that, like a mixer for kind of conservative leaning trad people.
Really?
In London, I believe.
Huh. Mm-hmm. Is it working?
I don't know. I think they did it one time. She was talking about it.
I don't think you should be with people for political reasons. I don't
think it's political, but I think people have a hard time finding
somebody,
especially
who hate them
men
for their
are
politics.
Always complaining about this on the dating apps. The women are always like, swipe left if you are, to the right of Noam Chomsky. So
I honestly don't even think. I think that if a woman is saying that on a dating app, just ignore her. Like she's just saying that. It's just a signal. It doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It doesn't.
I know.
If she likes you enough, she won't care.
Okay.
I mean, traditionally,
she's not going to go out with you one time. I mean, sometimes somebody was just telling me recently that a girl asked for his political affiliation before they even went out. Like they had a date to go out, and she was like, "Are you conservative?" And he said yes, and she canceled the date.
Really?
Yes.
I find that surprising. I mean, I was never like that.
Well,
I think
you wouldn't be.
But I was a big, I was a very, in college, around that time when I was actively dating, I think that was the most lefty liberal I ever was. And I wouldn't have said no to a guy for being conservative.
Yeah. But
I mean, I actually didn't. I dated conservative guys and it wasn't a thing. It didn't.
Yeah.
I had a crush on one of my professors who it turned out, he never said anything on purpose. I've never talked about it. He was like a Republican operative.
Did you ask him out? As
No,
we discussed last time, you should ask out your professor if he's not asking you out.
I didn't. I was so nervous in his presence. I could never go to even when I needed to go to office hours, I just didn't go. But the great thing about having a crush on your professor is that you end up getting great grades.
Totally.
I got such good grades.
Is this statistics?
In his classes.
Is this your statistics class that you love?
It is a class.
Or your polling class. Yes.
Incredibly boring classes he put out there. And I took them and I got A's. So there you go.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
So we're going to talk about hate crimes. There was a terrible incident last week in Lake Arrowhead, California. There was a woman, a storekeeper. Her name was Laura Ann Carlton. She went by Lori. She had a pride flag in front of her store, and she was known for having this flag up. And I guess there had been a little controversy around it. And so in the past, every time somebody had taken it down, she would put up a bigger flag. And some guy came along, and there was some kind of confrontation, and he shot her. And this was reported immediately as a hate crime. This woman was 66 years old. They did not release the name of the assailant immediately, and I have to say I'm not proud of this, but my initial instinct was that it was not a hate crime. That this was going to be one of these things like the Pulse nightclub shooting.
And we know this for sure that it is, or
well, I'll get to this in a minute. So just my initial thing was I don't believe this. Lake Arrowhead is pretty I mean, I don't know. I just don't believe that this kind of thing would happen. Like, it just doesn't sound right. It sounds off. I mean, it's a rural area. Yeah. It's people, have cabins up there and vacation homes. But it's still like adjacent to Los Angeles. It just sounded off to me. But eventually it came out that this guy who killed her, he's not a white guy. He's a Japanese American. His name is David J. Ikuguchi. He's, I'm sorry. Excuse me. That's not right. Travis Ikuguchi. His father is named David J. He's a 27-year-old guy. Obviously, a lot of mental health problems. He had stuff all over his social media accounts, ranging from burning pride flags, homophobic comments to, do not trust the cops, just very paranoid kinds of things. His father actually was a former state trooper in Florida, whatever. So it sounds like, yes, this was motivated by a reaction that he was having to her flag. But I mean, I'm curious, like, do you find yourself immediately distrusting the narrative when you hear stories like this?
Every time. I mean, but it's not so much distrusting, as it is, I think it's better just to wait. And when I haven't personally waited and just allowed my emotions to become a part of, whether that be to resist it and to say it can't be because of the such and such reasons, when I have, fallen into that desire to have my biases be, somehow at the end correct. I find that I end up, making a fool of myself with, egg on my face. So I think the best thing to do anytime something like this happens is just to give it a month, 2 months, more. A lot of times we don't know what actually happened for a very, very, very long time. And there's always this instantaneous reaction. Sometimes it's right. Sometimes it's not right. And we don't know which is which. We don't know in the moment how correct the information that we're getting is. We don't know if there are some factors that we just don't understand, that are happening in the background. So many, I mean, how many cases are we going to have to hear of, it turns out that this was a hate crime, or this crazy thing happened and it turns out that it was nothing like that. Or, some facts of the case came out later that ended up dispelling the original narrative or just undermining it a little bit. We just shouldn't be using these sort of extreme events in order to, to pad our, political, like this is the reason why we feel the way we feel, and this is why we are true victims, and why the other people are really, really evil or bigoted or hateful. Especially in the case of mental illness, it's such a. That's when it gets to be such a tricky thing, because it's so easy for, a mentally ill person that was even like, they could be an LGBT ally one day and in a month they'll spiral and become something else. And I've known people who've had psychotic breaks who were atheists, like very explicit atheists. And then they would have a breakdown, and then they're, deep, fundamentally religious. And saying all kinds of strange things, and talking about magic and all these things. I mean, it was you saw somebody become somebody else. And how do we know what's going on here? And I don't know why. I do know why. I do know why everyone feels the need to just be like, this is a part of a rising, tide of this one thing.
I mean, what is the need? Like, what would you say is the need? Is it because people can't handle randomness?
People can't handle randomness. People can't handle the numbers of it, the numbers of what's actually going on in terms of hate crimes. We are a very, very large country, very, very large country, and hate crimes are tiny. They're just you're not. I mean, you might at worst just experience some bad behavior, but something like a murder, like this is, you're much more likely to be killed in a million other ways, and for a million other reasons than somebody hates you for some characteristic that you have. And it just feels like we don't have a a media complex that is willing to be the mature adult people in the room and put it into that context. I remember when, Islamic terror was happening all the time. Then they would be, oh, wait a minute, it never happens. I mean, look at how many 1 billion, 2 billion, 5 billion Muslims in the world, and all of them are peaceful except for this one guy. Mm-hmm. At that point, they would go out of their way to put it into a context, which was I was for this context. And I think that was important because my activism had never had much to do with extremism. It had to do with, the kind of day-to-day problems of that I saw within the religion, and tensions that I thought that it would create amongst, citizens and the Western world. And it's interesting that nobody cares to wait anymore, and to say, let's wait.
Well, because they wouldn't they wouldn't get any clicks. I mean, these news organizations have a mandate now to hang up these frames just instantly. Yeah. There's another story that I'm totally fascinated by, in New York. This happened, I think it was back in July, earlier this summer. This is the case of O'Shea Sibley, who, was a guy, this happened in Brooklyn, a young black, gay, dancer. I think he's a professional dancer. He was with his friends. It was at night in a Brooklyn gas station. I think someplace like, kind of deep in Brooklyn, not quite East New York, but certainly not Park Slope. And so I think he'd been out with his friends for the day, and they were, getting gas at this gas station. And, they were like in a good mood. They were dancing around in the parking lot and voguing in particular, which I guess is like, strutting around like a model. They were not in drag, but they were doing these kinds of moves and this particular style of movement and dance. These guys came out of the gas station, and most of them were pretty young. I'm not sure the age range. And apparently said, stop doing that. We are Muslim. You are offending our religion. Don't dance around like that. And we should say these guys, they had like no shirt. They were sort of in their underwear or their bathing suits, and they were shirtless, and they were strutting around in a pretty obstreperous way. Okay. As often happens in New York City. And there was some kind of back and forth and yelling back and forth. And, at one point there was an altercation, and O'Shea Sibley gets stabbed by one of the men, and with the knife, who had a pocket knife, and bleeds out and dies. Okay. So immediately this is reported as anti-LGBT hate crime. Oh my gosh, this happened in Brooklyn. And apparently one of O'Shea Sibley's neighbors in his apartment building had said something to him like, don't strut around so much. An older gay guy had said something like, hey, maybe take it down a notch when you're out. Don't strut around. Just for whatever reason. And so that kind of detail was in the mix. And then it suddenly becomes like, why are LGBT people having to censor themselves or they can't be themselves out on the street? And this is the framing. If you look at the video, it appears that, O'Shea Sibley actually lunged at this person. And then it goes out of the video. Now, what we later learn is that the person who killed him is 17 years old, is not a Muslim, in fact, is a Russian immigrant, is a Christian, whatever that means. My guess is that some of the other people who were yelling were maybe Muslim. I don't know. They own the gas station.
So it was reported to be Muslims done by
somebody.
So
yes, it was reported that the person who killed him was Muslim, because at one point one of the guys in this mix had yelled, "We're Muslim and this offends us."
Okay.
So, but the kid who killed him turns out not to be Muslim. So that has been corrected. Anyway, the whole story has been presented as, it's terrible. Here's more hate against LGBT people. Now, that is technically true. But the fact is that I think we're going to get a very different story when this goes to trial. And I will be very curious to see if the media bothers to cover it at all. They've already backed way off of it. I noticed that, I mean, there was a big story in the New York Times right after it happened.
And that in itself is so telling. When suddenly it drops, cold, this hot story.
Before the Muslim thing was announced, it was a big deal. As soon as the Muslim thing came up, it went away.
Yeah. Yeah. And now they're too worried about it. They're too worried that it might be not a very simplistic story, and I'm not going to talk about it. I mean, I think the correct stance when we hear things like this is just to not have an opinion, not to say to distrust or mistrust or whatever, like not to hold even a negative opinion, but just not to hold one at all, until we know a lot more, maybe even up until the point that there's a trial, because we've seen that happen too, where there's a specific narrative, and then it isn't until the trial, they go to trial, that it turns out there were so many other mitigating factors that paint a more complicated picture that cannot be utilized.
And nobody's paying attention at that point. All they're going to hear is the outcome of the trial, and then they're not going to like it. You know what I
mean? I mean, this is the job of the news media. This right here, to be the people who are reporting 2 years later and saying, "Hey guys, it's really important that you all follow up on this and update your whatever your mental models to better reflect reality." But it is so clear that the news media is not interested in doing that, and when I say this, I don't mean mainstream liberal outlets only. I think this is just a news media problem, and it's a big part of why I'm on the anti-news campaign and have been for a long time. I mean, because it's just, you're not being, if you construct your worldview paying attention to these stories, you're going to have a worldview that is necessarily distorted. You can expect, the one thing that you can count on is that it won't look like reality. The difference between, not watching the news and watching the news is maybe a less filled in worldview versus a filled in worldview, but it's actually not our world. It's not, it's some fantasy reality that doesn't even reflect what we're doing. I think that can be more dangerous, because you think you know what's going on. You think you understand, these broad cultural movements, you think and so you think that you're comfortable in your sense of self, your knowledge, and you move forward accordingly, and that's dangerous. It's better to think, look, I don't know about these things. I don't know. I'm going to consult a book 5 years down the road that's going to compile the rise of hate crimes or whatever, and it's going to go into things in more detail, and it's going to look at these cases specifically.
Yeah, but most people aren't going to do that. I mean,
so I think either do that or do nothing.
Yeah, well,
you know what I mean? It shouldn't be do that versus watch the news, because you're just going to be misled watching the news. So don't do that.
I mean, do you know that the Matthew Shepard story is so much more complicated than most people believe? I mean, what do you know about the Matthew Shepard case, the Laramie Project and all of that?
I mean, at this point, what's real? Well, I don't know what I know about it. I know the myth.
Right. So the hagiography kind of Matthew Shepard was that he was a young gay man in Laramie, Wyoming, who was murdered for being gay. He was beat up, and he was tied to a fence post out in the middle of nowhere. And in some reports, he was had his arms out, as if Christ on the crucifix. In other reports, that it was conjectured that they had done this as if you would, farmers would put a coyote up on a fence post to somehow scare away the other coyote. I don't know. There was a whole bunch of symbolism attached to the way that he was killed, which was incredibly brutal. I mean, he was beat up and put on a fence post. Is awful, awful, awful. And out of this sprung decades and decades of mythology and legend around this. The Laramie Project, which is this play that is performed in schools everywhere that just has to do with homophobia and gay culture and tolerance. It's kind of it's its own pedagogy in a way. It's kind of a little 1619 project. The Matthew Shepard murder happened in 1998. And what we have since learned over the years is that he was actually involved in the methamphetamine trade. The two guys that killed him were involved in a drug deal with him. One of the guys had sex with Matthew Shepard. There was like a million things going on. And that's not to say that what happened to him was not horrific, but it's so much more than any of that. And, there was a book that came out in 2013 called The Book of Matt by this guy, Stephen Jimenez, who himself is a gay guy. And he really went back and spent, years interviewing all kinds of people, law enforcement, people in the community and others about the real situation. And it was incredibly complicated. Like Matthew Shepard was into a lot of really dangerous stuff. And I have to say, as frustrating as it is that this has been memory hold, I was going back and reading about this last night. And, back in 2013, 2014, the news outlets that were actually covering the story of Stephen Jimenez's book and, at least nodding in the direction of wanting to get to the truth, it would blow your mind. I mean, The Guardian, The Nation, there's an excellent piece in The Guardian from, 2014. Oh my gosh. And I'm seeing that it is by Julie Bindel. What do you know? Okay. The truth behind America's most famous gay hate murder. It's a really long, comprehensive piece, about the details of this. And, there was a writer from The Nation who was also speaking up, about how the media had misframed everything. Like as recently as 2014, there was a genuine desire in the media to get to the truth of things. And I have to say, I was shocked because as I've said here before, like I often kind of find myself wondering like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? Like being so excited to be in the media for all those years. Like, why did I get into this? Why did I think that all the smartest, most interesting people were in the media? Well, because actually they were up until very recently. And so I don't know. It's just pretty remarkable. And you see this with the Pulse nightclub shooting was another case where that was in Orlando where somebody came in and shot up this gay club and it was immediately framed as a hate crime. And it turned out, I think that was an Islamic terrorist, was it not? And and it was like the third place he'd tried. He had tried to go to two other nightclubs, but like couldn't get in to shoot them up. And then went to Pulse, having no idea that it was a gay club. So, and Vox, actually, of all places, reported that story out.
Yeah. It's not sufficient. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like if you break the news, it spreads like wildfire. And then you break the news again, maybe with less enthusiasm. You have to drum up at least 10 times as much enthusiasm for the correction, as you do for the original, because the correction doesn't inspire the kind of, emotional response in people. And so they won't share it on their own. It won't go viral in the same way. I think there's something about, media responsibility that we have to have a real conversation about what is the responsible way to report on things like this. And is, our modern, maybe not the people that were around 20 years ago, but are the modern media professionals being responsible with what they're reporting and why they're reporting it. And either it is the case that you just, report the story and you don't drum it up too much. You're like, this has happened. This is what we heard. Or you go out of your way when a correction comes, But what frustrates me is that something like this will happen. A crime will occur, and they'll give you some facts, and then they'll give you a bunch of opinion. They'll give you all this stuff about, there's some op-ed with Michelle Goldberg about how da-da-da-da-da.
We are living in the age of...
this is the age of, and this is what, this LGBTQ politician or, POC politician or woman, but whatever. This is what professional woman, professional, brown person had to say about it. And this is what the community leaders had. And here's 5 op-eds.
And those people are saying it because it's an opportunity for them to get platformed. Who knows if they even believe it? Who knows how much they've even thought about it? But that's their moment.
Yeah. It is so irresponsible to allow that again and again and again. And it tarnishes the reporting itself, because the reporting is sometimes, oftentimes actually, I'll go back to it and it's pretty clean. They're very much like they're just reporting the literal facts and they're letting it go after that. But then, you invite the community leader for a comment and you have this op-ed, this op-ed, this op-ed, this op-ed, some analysis later on about how hate crimes against whatever group have increased. And all of it pushes the same, it's backing the same interpretation of the events. Whether or not the news media, whether or not they're intentionally doing that, is in fact what is happening. And people are getting the message, oh, something messed up happened. And I know because I read this op-ed, from
so they're going to say,
whoever.
So they're going to say, what does it matter what the facts are? Because this is an important message to put out there. I mean, people are going to say, okay, well, correct the story if you want, but the fact is the Laramie Project is an incredibly important cultural artifact and has, enlightened countless students throughout the decades. And what's wrong with that? Why are you being such a stick in the mud?
Yeah, I don't know if we have only so much time and energy to put into things. I don't think that, given the state of the culture war and the way that we cover culture, I don't think for a second that we are involved in talking about the most important issues facing, Americans, and not even the most important 10, the top 10 issues.
Oliver Anthony is talking about those things. Yes.
Right. I mean, we're not touching on, until he gets to the pedo island, but it's true that we have a very distorted view of the harms that face us, and who is marginalized in American society, who's suffering and why. We have a very distorted view of this. And in fact, it's like there's something about the lag of when we become aware of a problem. It's like a 20-year lag of here's a terrible situation and circumstance. People start talking about it. People start raising awareness, and minds and politics start changing. And then 20 years later, now we're fully confronting it. But by that time, it's actually not a problem anymore. You know what I mean? In the same degree. Right. But I think that's the case when it comes to women's
Coney
issues.
2012. Remember that?
Right.
Remember the Joseph Coney viral video and about?
I didn't understand.
Well, it was over. Like the crisis was over.
Yeah. There's just a lag, and by the time that an issue becomes on the forefront of the minds of the average American, and they're sympathetic to it, right? The average sympathetic enough that it will sell newspapers. By that point, it's not actually the anywhere near the gravest problem facing us, or even facing that group. It could be something different, right? I mean, when it comes to women's rights issues, you have like popular feminists. They're still going on about, the kinds of things that really aren't discrimination at the office, wage gap, all these things that, well, is it real? To what extent is it real? It maybe was real, but there's been a lag.
It's multifactorial.
And now we've recovered things.
Yeah.
Things have changed. And that's not the worst thing that's facing women today. It's not anywhere near the area that we need to be focused on.
What do you think is the worst thing facing women today?
When it comes to actual women's rights, if I was a feminist, I would say that it's the gender issues. Absolutely. Like that's the issue in which I think women need, like women as a class, women as a reproductive sex, not women as people, because of course that's a whole different conversation. But if you are a true feminist, I think you should, in that regard, I respect radical feminists. I think that they are focused on the thing that it makes sense to focus on. If you are a women's rights campaigner, but it's very telling that the vast majority of feminists in the United States aren't doing anything like that.
You think that that's a bigger threat than reproductive rights?
Yes, because I think that there's, because of how, I mean, there's many things going into it. One, people aren't having sex anymore as much. Two,
okay,
I mean,
so
nobody's having
sex.
But the second thing is that contraceptives are more, we have greater access to them, and we have many different options when it comes to contraceptives. That it's a real, it's not to say that reproductive rights are not an issue. It's just that the amount of people that they're affecting is much smaller than it used to be when there was a kind of a different environment.
Okay, I don't know about that. But it's people are going to say the amount of people being affected by trans women in locker rooms is also small. I mean, I think so
you would say that reproductive rights are and when we're talking reproductive rights, we're just talking about abortion. We're not talking about contraceptives, because very few people say, even when it comes to, and it bothers me when I hear this, when it's like reproductive rights, and that sounds like a big umbrella. Mm-hmm. But really the only thing in question there is abortion, and really out of abortion, it's really this like specific kind of abortion that's very, very contentious. That's something
the problem is that the access is so limited. So even in states where it's, you have 12 weeks or something, it's nearly impossible to find a clinic. I mean, what the scariest part of the abortion thing is that women who have pregnancies that are going to kill them potentially in the third trimester have absolutely nowhere to go. And, or even in the second, and doctors are terrified of their hospital's legal systems, and and doctors aren't actually not as savvy about this as they should be. And so they're taking the safe route. And there's lots of really terrible cases. I don't know. I find it hard. I would have a hard time saying that gender is a bigger threat.
Here's what I'll say. I will definitely say that. And here's another reason why I'll say that, because I'm fairly convinced that, the Dobbs decision will end up being good for abortion rights.
I agree. Yes.
And so this is why I don't think it's under threat, because I think that what's about to happen is we're going to get inundated with cases of like a 12-year-old who was raped and now she can't get, and she can't, whatever. I mean, right. But
yeah. Or a time.
Didn't that turn out to be? Yeah, there were some hoaxes there too.
But talk about that another time, because again, that's another one that I have a lot of questions about.
That was not real. Yeah. But there's going to be so many, because in reality, it's an unfair law. And I think that Americans are not there anymore. And we're going to start normalizing a little bit and getting close. We're going to get close to where Europeans are, which was not as, it was not as lax as Roe was, in terms of I think Europeans, it depends on the country, obviously, but the average is kind of like 14 weeks or 15 weeks, something like that.
They have restrictions. I mean, people
those are their restrictions. Ours was a more lax restriction than that. Yeah. I think we're going to normalize, though. I think we're going to get close to where they are, and that's where we're going to stop, and that's probably where we should be. Not every single state, but I think many states. And then even when you have states like that, I lived in Texas. I went to the Planned Parenthood in Texas. I found access to a bunch of reproductive, nonprofit kind of groups, that were fairly accessible, actually. And they made an effort. Of course, they made an effort. That's not, it wasn't happening. They were raising money, and they were targeting these states where women needed help, and they were making change there, and they were getting the help to women, that, the women needed. So I am cautiously optimistic about the Dobbs decision, about what will in 20 years from now be the effect of it, the ultimate effect of it. I think it will be more, it will end up strengthening abortion rights. In my view,
it's going to be a painful road, though.
But that's not what's happening with gender.
Collateral damage.
The gender conversation is weakening a lot of important distinctions that we have in the law, that will, I think that if this becomes, the gender thing becomes something that is far more widely adopted, it will threaten many more groups than women's rights, because what we are doing fundamentally is saying that there is a social construct that is deeply felt. And if it is deeply felt enough, that it can override what we know to be a material reality. That broad principle is incredibly important to in every level, and at every segment of legal protections and civil liberties that we have in this country. And for that foundation to be weakened, I think that there's going to be consequences that are huge, and I'm afraid of them.
Okay, well, we're going to talk more about this in the bonus. We're going to have a gender bonus.
More gender bonus. Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on? You going to go to an Oliver Anthony concert over the weekend? What if he came to your town?
Then what if he did?
What if he came to? You never go.
What
anywhere.
am I supposed to do? I never go anywhere. I don't like live music.
Go out to the state fair and hear some.
Live music is I don't like it. I don't like. Oh my God. I want to.
You are so.
You like live music? You want to stand there?
No, I'm not. Live music doesn't mean standing necessarily.
It means
you can. No, I don't like that. I don't go to big shows. I would not go to.
It means being disappointed half the time because they're not as good.
Well, there's great artists that do small concerts and small There's nothing better than going to like a small venue. You sit down, the tables, you have a drink, you wait for your favorite artist to come up on stage, and they're close by. It's wonderful.
I don't enjoy music, live music at all. I just can't do it. I don't understand it. I don't understand why people go to it. Nothing about I love music, but I want to experience it by myself in a room alone without anybody else, why is everybody else a part of this?
Yeah, that's how I feel about drinking.
Okay.
Okay, I hear you. We have some common ground there.
Okay, cool.
All right.
All right.
See you soon.
Bye.